There are people in your life who don't attack you, don't insult you, don't openly betray you, yet every time you interact with them, you feel smaller, weaker, and more confused, and that's exactly why they're dangerous. Stoic philosophy warns us about this kind of harm, the kind that doesn't come from enemies, but from prolonged exposure to the wrong people. Cutting contact with someone like this feels uncomfortable. You question yourself, you feel guilty, you wonder if you're being too harsh. But Stoicism offers a calm, brutal truth. Staying connected to what corrodes your character is not loyalty, it's self-neglect. In this video, we'll examine 4 clear signs that cutting all contact isn't emotional, dramatic, or impulsive. It's rational, it's disciplined, and sometimes it's the most moral decision you can make. If you've been feeling torn between peace and obligation, stay with me. Because knowing when to walk away, quietly and without resentment, is one of the highest forms of self-mastery. Let's begin. 1. They repeatedly disrespect your boundaries. One mistake is human. Repeated disrespect is a pattern. Stoicism asks us to judge relationships not by intentions, but by behavior over time. A boundary isn't a demand. It's a statement of how you live. When someone crosses it once, you clarify. When they cross it again, you observe. When they continue crossing it, you're no longer dealing with misunderstanding. You're dealing with disregard. And disregard is information. Many people struggle here because the disrespect isn't loud. It's subtle. They ignore your no. They push past your time limits. They dismiss your discomfort with jokes or minimization. They keep doing what you've already asked them not to do. Individually, each moment feels small. Collectively, it becomes erosion. Stoic philosophy is clear. What you tolerate trains people how to treat you. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should expect others to act according to their own nature, not according to our hopes. So when someone repeatedly shows you they don't respect your limits, the Stoic response is not anger. It's adjustment. You don't argue more. You don't explain better. You don't escalate emotionally. You reduce access. This is where many people go wrong. They believe boundaries require enforcement through confrontation. Stoicism teaches something quieter and more effective. Boundaries are enforced through consistency. You stop showing up as much. You stop offering explanations. You stop rewarding disrespect with continued closeness. Not as punishment, as alignment. Because staying closely connected to someone who ignores your boundaries creates an internal contradiction. You say you respect yourself, but your behavior says otherwise. And that contradiction costs you peace. Here's the Stoic test for this sign. Ask yourself one honest question. Have I clearly expressed this boundary and watched it be ignored more than once? If the answer is yes, then the decision isn't emotional anymore. It's ethical. Epictetus reminded us that our duty is not to control others, but to protect our own moral character. Remaining in close contact with someone who repeatedly violates your limits forces you to compromise that character. And that's where Stoicism draws the line. You don't need to announce your exit. You don't need to make them understand. You don't need closure. You need distance. Distance restores clarity. Distance restores self-respect. Remember this Stoic truth. Boundaries ignored once are mistakes. Boundaries ignored repeatedly are warnings. And when warnings go unheeded, the disciplined response is not louder boundaries. It's fewer points of contact. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. 2. Every interaction leaves you emotionally drained. Pay attention to how you feel after interacting with someone. Not during, not while you're explaining, listening, or accommodating. After. Stoicism teaches us to evaluate life by its effects on our inner state, not by appearances or intentions. And one of the clearest signals that a relationship is unhealthy is consistent emotional exhaustion. This isn't about occasional conflict. All relationships require effort. This is about a pattern. Every conversation leaves you tense. You replay what you said. You doubt yourself. You feel heavy instead of grounded. Nothing dramatic happened, yet something was taken from you. That something is energy. From a Stoic perspective, your energy is not just emotional, it's moral. It fuels your patience, your clarity, your discipline. When it's constantly depleted, your character begins to suffer. Many people ignore this sign because the other person isn't openly hostile. They may be charming, funny, even familiar. But familiarity does not justify depletion. Stoicism reminds us, what repeatedly weakens you does not belong close to you. Here's where confusion often arises. Emotionally draining people rarely appear aggressive. More often, they pull you into endless complaints, subtle guilt, constant crises, emotional dependency. You become the regulator, the stabilizer, the one who absorbs. Over time, you stop showing up as yourself. You show up armored. And armor is heavy. Epictetus warned against allowing others to rent space in your mind. Emotional drain is what happens when that space is occupied without consent. The Stoic response is not confrontation, it's observation. Ask yourself, do I feel calmer or more agitated after we talk? Do I feel clear or confused? Do I feel like myself or like I'm recovering? If the answer is consistently negative, the signal is already there. At that point, staying connected is no longer generosity. It's self-neglect. Stoicism places responsibility squarely on you here. Not to fix them, not to diagnose them, not to carry them, but to protect your inner equilibrium. That protection may start small, shorter conversations, less emotional engagement, fewer explanations. But if the drain continues, distance becomes necessary. Not out of anger, out of conservation. Because a drained mind cannot practice virtue. And Stoicism is ultimately about virtue. Here's the Stoic rule to remember. Peace is expensive. Not everyone can afford access to it. If every interaction costs you clarity, you already have your answer. Cutting contact in this case is not abandonment. It's choosing not to bleed internally for the sake of staying connected. And that choice, calm, rational, unapologetic, is a deeply Stoic one. 3. They never take responsibility. Nothing erodes trust faster than someone who is never wrong. Stoic philosophy places enormous weight on one principle above almost everything else: personal responsibility. A person who cannot take responsibility cannot grow. And a relationship that cannot grow will only repeat the same damage. This sign reveals itself slowly. At first, it sounds reasonable. It wasn't my fault. You're too sensitive. That's just how things happened. If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have reacted this way. Notice the pattern. Every problem has an explanation, but never an owner. From a Stoic lens, this is not a flaw of communication, it's a flaw of character. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment we accept responsibility for our own judgments and actions. Someone who refuses that responsibility is trapped. And when you stay close to them, you get trapped in the loop with them. Here's how this affects you. You start doubting your memory. You question your reactions. You soften your boundaries to avoid another exhausting conversation, not because you're wrong, but because it's easier than arguing with someone who never admits fault. This is not compromise, it's erosion. A Stoic understands a hard truth here. You cannot reason someone into accountability if they have no relationship with truth. And truth, for Stoics, is not opinion. It's alignment between words and actions. Pay attention to these signals. Apologies that come with excuses, blame that always points outward, promises that repeat without change. I'm sorry you feel that way, instead of I was wrong. Over time, this creates a moral imbalance. You carry reflection, they carry deflection. You grow more careful, they grow more comfortable. That imbalance is unsustainable. Stoicism does not ask you to endure endless cycles in the name of patience. Patience is a virtue. Self-betrayal is not. When responsibility is absent, expectations must be removed. Not emotionally, practically. You stop investing in explanations. You stop expecting resolution. You stop hoping the next conversation will be different. And eventually, you stop showing up. This is not punishment, it's realism. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we must accept people as they show themselves to be, not as we wish them to become. When someone consistently avoids responsibility, they are showing you a limit. Respecting that limit means adjusting your distance. Here's the Stoic conclusion. You cannot build trust with someone who never owns their actions. If staying connected requires you to constantly abandon truth, clarity, or self-respect, then staying is no longer virtuous. At that point, cutting contact is not emotional. It's an act of intellectual honesty. And honesty, especially with yourself, is a core Stoic discipline. For you are becoming someone you don't respect. This is the most important sign of all, not because of what the other person does, but because of what you start doing. Stoicism teaches that character is the one thing you are never allowed to trade. And yet, some relationships slowly pressure you to do exactly that. You begin to hold back the truth. You soften your values. You tolerate behavior you would never advise a friend to accept. Not out of weakness, but out of habit. Out of fear of conflict, out of loyalty, out of the hope that this is just temporary. But character erosion is rarely dramatic. It's quiet. You laugh at things that make you uncomfortable. You stay silent when something crosses a line. You explain away actions that go against your principles, and over time, you notice something unsettling. You don't fully respect the version of yourself that shows up around this person. Stoic philosophy draws a hard line here. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to act in accordance with virtue, not convenience, not comfort, not attachment. A relationship that requires you to betray your own standards is not a relationship you can afford. This is where many people hesitate. They ask, isn't cutting contact extreme? Shouldn't I be more patient? Am I giving up too easily? Stoicism answers calmly. Patience applies to hardship, not to moral compromise. If staying connected costs you honesty, courage, or self-respect, then leaving is not abandonment. It's alignment. Here's the Stoic test for this sign. Ask yourself one clear question. Am I proud of how I behave when I'm around this person? Not how you feel about them. Not what they've been through. Not the history you share. Just your behavior. If the answer is no, that's the clearest signal you'll ever get. Epictetus taught that no external relationship is worth internal slavery. Remaining close to someone who pulls you away from your values turns peace into a negotiation and a character into collateral. A Stoic does not negotiate character. When this sign appears, cutting contact doesn't require drama. No speeches, no ultimatums, no explanations designed to be understood. You simply stop placing yourself in situations that require you to become someone you're not proud of. That quiet withdrawal is not avoidance, it's discipline. Remember this Stoic truth. If staying costs you your character, leaving is a moral duty. This is not about punishing anyone, it's about protecting the one thing you're responsible for above all else. Who you are. And when you choose character over connection, clarity follows. So does peace. Cutting contact is not cruelty, it's clarity. So let's step back and look at this clearly. 4 signs. repeated disrespect for your boundaries, constant emotional exhaustion, a refusal to take responsibility, and the most serious one. You no longer respect who you're becoming. None of these signs are dramatic. That's why they're dangerous. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to harden your heart. It asks you to protect your character. Cutting contact is not about anger. It's not about winning. And it's not about proving a point. It's about refusing to trade your peace, your clarity, or your values for continued access. Some relationships don't end with explosions. They end with awareness. And when awareness arrives, the disciplined response is quiet distance, not endless explanations. Marcus Aurelius wrote that your life is shaped by the thoughts and influences you allow close to you. Choosing who no longer belongs there is part of that responsibility. So if any of these signs resonated, remember this. You are not required to stay connected to what slowly dismantles you. Distance is not hatred, it's discernment. I'll leave you with this Stoic affirmation. I choose peace over obligation. If this helped you think more clearly, like the video, subscribe, and comment one word below: clarity. Because the calmest decisions are often the strongest ones.